Cole had been flying cargo ships for 12 years, and he thought he had seen everything the galaxy had to offer. He was wrong about that. He was wrong about a lot of things, but he would not understand how wrong until much later. The day started simply enough. Brought his ship, the Quiet Dawn, into dock at station. It was not a nice place. The station floated at the edge of civilized space, far from any government that might enforce laws or ask difficult questions. Pirates came here. Smugglers came here. People who wanted to disappear came here. Came here because the prices were low and he needed to save money wherever he could. His plan was simple. He would buy frozen protein stocks, the kind of preserved meat that colony worlds needed but could not produce themselves. He would transport the cargo to a mining settlement 3 weeks away. He would collect his payment and move on to the next job. It was not exciting work, but it kept his ship flying and food in his stomach. The market at station was a massive chamber filled with noise and smells and creatures from dozens of different worlds. Pushed through the crowd, his translation earpiece feeding him fragments of conversations in languages he did not recognize. The device was old and often unreliable, but he could not afford a better one. He found what he was looking for near the back of the market, a raised platform where merchants displayed their goods and buyers called out their offers. Cryogenic containers lined the walls, each one large enough to hold several 100 pounds of frozen cargo. Studied them with a practiced eye, looking for the best value. The auctioneer was a creature did not recognize, tall and thin with too many arms and a voice that buzzed like an insect. His translator struggled with the rapid speech, catching only pieces of what was being said. He heard words like cargo and container and premium quality. That was enough for him. A container came up for auction. It was smaller than the others, marked with symbols could not read. The starting price was low, surprisingly low. Raised his hand to bid. Other buyers looked at him. Some seemed confused. Others seemed amused. Did not understand why, but he did not care. He was focused on the price, which remained low even as the auction continued. He won the bid easily, paying less than he had expected. Felt pleased with himself as he arranged for the container to be delivered to his ship. He imagined the profit he would make, the repairs he could finally afford, the breathing room in his accounts. He was still imagining these things when the container arrived at the Quiet Dawn. The first sign that something was wrong came when he opened the outer shell. The interior was not configured for meat storage. It was configured for something else entirely. Stared at the 2 pods inside, trying to understand what he was seeing. They were stasis pods, medical grade, the kind used for transporting living passengers across long distances. Through the frosted glass could see faces, 2 faces, 2 people. 2 aliens with pale blue-gray skin and large dark eyes, their bodies thin and delicate, their limbs longer than a human's would be. Stood very still for a long time. He had not bought meat, he had bought people. The auction had not been for livestock, it had been for slaves. Slavery was illegal in most of civilized space. The great powers had banned it centuries ago, but station was not in civilized space. Station was exactly the kind of place where such things still happened, where lives were bought and sold like any other cargo. Checked the documentation that came with the container. His translator worked better with written text, and slowly the truth became clear. The 2 beings in the pods were a species knew almost nothing about. They were sisters. They had been sold 3 times before reaching. Their previous owner had grown tired of them. The document listed them by number, not by name. Sat down on the floor of his cargo bay. He put his head in his hands. He tried to think. He could return them. The auction house would probably take them back, maybe even refund his money. The sisters would be sold again to someone else, someone who had known exactly what they were buying, someone who wanted slaves. He could abandon them. Leave the container at the station, walk away, pretend none of this had ever happened. They would be found eventually. They would be sold eventually. The result would be the same. Or he could do something else, something that made no sense, something that would cause him nothing but trouble. Was not a hero. He had never wanted to be a hero. He was a cargo hauler who lived alone on a small ship and tried to avoid complications. But he could not stop looking at those faces through the frosted glass. They looked so young. They looked so helpless. He thought about what his mother would say if she could see him now. She had been dead for 15 years, but he still heard her voice sometimes, especially when he was about to do something stupid. She would tell him to mind his own business. She would tell him that the galaxy was full of suffering and one man could not fix it all. She would tell him to be practical. Stood up, he walked to the first pod. He found the release mechanism. He was not being practical. He was not minding his own business. He was doing something stupid and he knew it, and he did it anyway. The pod opened with a hiss of escaping vapor. Cold air spilled out across the cargo bay floor. The figure inside began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing awareness. Her eyes opened. They were large and dark and filled with fear. Stepped back, giving her space. He raised his hands to show he was not armed. He tried to look harmless, though he was not sure he succeeded. She looked at him. She looked at the cargo bay around her. She looked at her sister, still frozen in the second pod. Then she looked at again, and he saw something in her eyes that he recognized. He saw someone who expected pain, someone who expected cruelty, someone who had learned that hope was just another word for disappointment. Did not know what to say. He did not know how to explain that he had bought her by accident, that he meant her no harm, that he was just as confused as she was. So he said the only thing he could think of. "I am sorry, I made a mistake, but I am going to try to fix it." She did not understand his words. His translator was working in one direction but not the other. But maybe she understood something in his voice, or in his face, or in the way he stood so far away from her. She watched him, she waited, she did not attack. It was a beginning. Her name was, though did not learn this until much later. In those first moments there were no names. There was only fear and confusion and the cold air of the cargo bay. She moved faster than expected. One moment she was lying in the pod, weak and disoriented. The next moment she was on her feet, her thin body coiled like a spring, her dark eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him take another step backward. She spoke in a language his translator could not process. The words came out as static and fragments, meaningless noise, but her tone needed no translation. She was angry, she was terrified, she was ready to fight. Kept his hands raised. He spoke slowly, hoping his words might reach her even if hers could not reach him. He told her his name. He told her she was on his ship. He told her he was not going to hurt her. She did not believe him. Why would she? Tried to imagine what her life had been like, sold from owner to owner, treated as property instead of a person. Trust would not come easily to someone who had learned that trust only led to pain. They stood there for a long time, watching each other across the cargo bay. Did not move closer, did not move away. It was a standoff with no clear resolution. Then she looked at the second pod, her sister, still frozen, still helpless. Her expression changed. The anger remained, but something else appeared beneath it. Fear of a different kind, not fear for herself, fear for someone she loved. She spoke again, pointing at the pod, understood what she wanted even without translation. He nodded and moved toward the release mechanism, watched his every movement, ready to strike if he did anything she did not like. The second pod opened. The younger sister emerged more slowly, her eyes blinking against the light, her body shivering from the cold. She was smaller than, more delicate, with the same blue-gray skin and dark eyes but softer features. Rushed to her side, wrapping her arms around her sister, speaking rapidly in their shared language. The younger one clung to her, tears forming in those large dark eyes. They held each other like survivors of a shipwreck, like people who had lost everything except each other. Watched from a distance, he felt like an intruder in a private moment. He wanted to help, but he did not know how. He did not know anything about these people, their culture, their needs, their pain. He only knew that he had accidentally made himself responsible for them, and he had no idea what to do next. Time passed. The sisters spoke to each other in voices too low for to hear. Eventually, looked up at him. Her expression had not softened, but something had shifted. She was evaluating him now, trying to understand what kind of creature he was. His translator finally caught up, processing enough of their language to produce broken but understandable speech. Asked him a question that came through as, "What do you want from us?" Answered honestly. He told her about the auction, about his mistake, about the frozen meat he thought he was buying. He told her that slavery was illegal where he came from, that humans did not own other people, that he had not known what he was doing. Listened, her expression did not change. When he finished, she shook her head slowly. "No one buys by accident," she said through the translator. "No one frees without wanting something." Did not know how to argue with that. From her perspective, his story made no sense. In a galaxy where people were bought and sold every day, the idea of an accidental purchase must have seemed absurd. And the idea of freedom with no strings attached must have seemed even more absurd. The younger sister spoke for the first time. Her voice was softer than her words coming through the translator with less static. "His ship is small, no room for slaves, no chains, no guards." Looked around the cargo bay, seeing what her sister had noticed. The quiet dawn was built for one person. There were no cells, no restraints, no infrastructure for keeping prisoners. It was not the ship of someone who traded in living beings. Saw the doubt enter her eyes. She was not convinced, but she was no longer certain he was lying. It was progress. He explained his situation. He could not afford to simply drop them at the nearest safe port. The costs would ruin him. The documentation required for refugee processing was complicated and expensive. He needed to complete his cargo run first, needed to earn some money before he could help them properly. Laughed at this. It was not a happy sound. "So we are still cargo," she said. "Just cargo you feel guilty about." Could not deny the truth in her words. He was asking them to wait, to trust him, to believe that he would eventually do the right thing. He had no proof to offer. He had only his word, and his word meant nothing to people who had been lied to their entire lives. The younger sister spoke again. Her name, would learn later, was, "Where else can we go?" It was a simple question with a complicated answer. They were escaped slaves on a station that permitted slavery. They had no money, no connections, no legal status. If they left ship, they would be captured within hours. If they stayed, they were depending on the goodness of a stranger who might be just another owner in disguise. Looked at her sister, looked at, the silence stretched out between them. Finally spoke, "We stay for now, but if you try anything I will kill you." Nodded. It was a fair arrangement under the circumstances. He showed them to the small passenger cabin, apologizing for its size. He brought them food and water and blankets. He gave them privacy to rest and recover. Hours passed. Sat in the cockpit, staring at the stars outside his window, wondering what he had gotten himself into. He had wanted a simple cargo run. He had gotten two traumatized aliens who expected him to betray them at any moment. His console beeped. A ship had entered the station's space, checked the identification codes, and felt his stomach drop. The ship was broadcasting combine signals. They were the ones who had conquered the ones who had enslaved its people for generations. Someone at the station had reported the unusual sale. The original owners wanted their property back. Looked toward the passenger cabin where the sisters were resting. He looked at the ship growing larger on his display. He thought about everything that would happen if he simply opened his cargo bay and handed them over. He thought about eyes when she held her sister. He thought about its quiet voice asking where else they could go. Started the engine. The quiet dawn began to move. He was not going to hand them over. He was going to run. It was stupid. It was dangerous. It was probably going to get him killed. He did it anyway. The ship was called the Iron Mandate, and it was everything the quiet dawn was not. It was large where ship was small. It was fast where his was slow. It was armed with weapons that could tear through his hull like paper through water. A voice came through the communication system, cold and mechanical. Human vessel, you are carrying property belonging to the Combine. Surrender the cargo immediately or face destruction. Did not respond. He pushed his engines harder, aiming for the asteroid field that lay between station and open space. It was his only chance. In open space, they would catch him in minutes. In the asteroids, he might survive long enough to find another way. Appeared in the cockpit doorway. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. They found us. It was not a question. Nodded without looking away from his controls. The asteroid field was growing larger on his display, a maze of spinning rocks and hidden dangers. He had flown through difficult terrain before, but never while being chased by a warship. You should hand us over, said. Her voice was flat, defeated. It is what everyone does. Glanced at her. I am not everyone. The quiet dawn entered the asteroid field. Hands moved across the controls with practiced speed, adjusting course, avoiding collisions, threading his small ship through gaps that would be impossible for anything larger. Behind him, the Iron Mandate followed, its weapons already charging. The first shot missed by a narrow margin. Felt the heat of it through the hull, saw the flash of energy as it struck an asteroid and shattered it into pieces. He pushed harder, diving deeper into the field. Appeared beside her sister. She was watching the display, her dark eyes tracking the movement of the asteroids with strange intensity. Left, she said suddenly. Go left. Did not question her. He turned left, and a moment later an asteroid tumbled through the space where he would have been. He looked at with new respect. How did you know? Did not answer directly. She pointed at another gap in the field. There, that path is clear. Explained while followed her sister's guidance. Have good eyes, good sense of space. Our had many dangers. We learned to see paths that others cannot see. Filed this information away for later consideration. Right now, he needed every advantage he could get. The Iron Mandate was struggling with the asteroid field, its size working against it, but they were not giving up. More shots flew past, each one closer than the last. They will not stop, said. The Combine does not forgive theft. They will chase us until they have us or we are dead. Knew she was right. They had built their empire on the principle that their property was theirs forever. Letting two escape would set a dangerous example. They would pursue this matter to the end. Another shot grazed the quiet dawn's hull. Alarms began to sound, silenced them and kept flying. Continued to guide him, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. Left, right, up, down, through gaps so narrow that could see the rocks scraping past his windows. She had a gift he did not understand, an ability to process spatial information faster than any human could match. The Iron Mandate fell behind. The commander was skilled, but his ship was too large for this kind of flying. He tried to compensate by firing more frequently, filling the space with energy blasts, hopping to catch the quiet dawn through sheer volume. One blast found its target, the ship shuddered, lights flickered. A new alarm sounded, this one too important to silence. Hull breach, said. Cargo bay. It is not critical, but we need to patch it soon. They were almost through the asteroid field. Could see clear space ahead, stars unobstructed by tumbling rock. He pushed his engines to their limit, ignoring the warning lights that told him he was doing damage. The quiet dawn burst out of the asteroid field like a cork from a bottle. Behind them, the Iron Mandate was still fighting its way through, minutes away from reaching open space. plotted a course for Harmon Station. It was a human settlement far from territory, far from anyone who might enforce Combine law. If they could reach it, they might be safe. But Harmon Station was days away, and the ship was damaged. The Iron Mandate emerged from the asteroid field. Its commander sent another message, promising mercy if surrendered now, promising pain if he did not. Turned off the communication system. Watched him. Her expression had changed since the chase began. The suspicion was still there, but something else had joined it. Something that might have been curiosity. "Why did you run?" she asked. Thought about the question. He did not have a good answer. He was not brave. He was not noble. He was just a cargo hauler who had made a mistake and was now trying to live with the consequences. "Because I could not stand the thought of handing you back," he said finally. "Because I kept imagining what they would do to you. Because running felt like the only thing I could live with." Was silent for a long moment. The ship was falling behind now, unable to match the quiet dawn speed in open space without the obstacles of the asteroid field. They were escaping, at least for now. "You are strange," said. "I have met many humans. None of them were like you." Shrugged. "I am not sure I am like anything. I just do what feels right and hope it works out." Spoke up from her position by the display. "The damage is serious. We will need repairs before we can reach your human station." Checked his systems. She was right. The hull breach was patched for now, but other systems had been damaged in the chase. The engines were overheating. The navigation computer was glitching. They would be lucky to make it halfway to Harmon Station before something critical failed. He adjusted course for a nearby waypoint where they could make basic repairs. It would cost time. It would cost money. But it was better than dying in the void. Sat down in the co-pilot seat. It was a small gesture, but understood what it meant. She was not trusting him yet, but she was no longer expecting him to betray her at any moment. Progress came in small steps. Had learned that much in his years of flying alone through the dark spaces between stars. You could not force trust. You could not demand loyalty. You could only act with integrity and hope that others saw it. He looked at the two sisters who had entered his life through accident and circumstance. He looked at the damaged ship that was now their only protection. He looked at the stars ahead, full of danger and possibility in equal measure. They had escaped the immediate threat, but knew this was not over. They would not forget. They would send more ships, file more claims, use every tool at their disposal to recover what they considered their property. This was just the beginning. The journey to Harmon Station took 9 days. 9 days of cramped quarters and recycled air, and the constant hum of damaged engines struggling to keep them moving. 9 days of learning to live together. Had lived alone for so long that he had forgotten what it meant to share space with others. The quiet dawn was built for one person, and now there were 3. Privacy became a memory. Silence became impossible. Every meal was shared, every conversation was overheard, every moment was witnessed. At first it was awkward. Stayed close to her sister, watching with eyes that never fully relaxed. Was more curious, exploring the small ship with careful fingers, asking questions about everything she saw. Answered as best he could, explaining the systems that kept them alive, the cargo he usually carried, the life he had built among the stars. On the 3rd day, offered to help with repairs. Was surprised. He had expected her to stay distant, to maintain the barrier between them until they reached safety. Instead, she appeared in the engine room where he was struggling with a damaged coupling, her thin hands already reaching for tools. "I was trained for this," she explained. "Before I was sold the first time, technical work, maintenance. My owners found other uses for me, but I remember what I learned." Her skills were better than. Within hours, she had repaired systems that had been planning to limp along with until they reached Harmon Station. The engines ran smoother. The navigation computer stopped glitching. The ship felt healthier, more responsive. thanked her, shrugged like it meant nothing, but he saw the small pride in her eyes. She had been treated as property for so long that she had forgotten she had value beyond what could be bought and sold. Found the ship's entertainment archive on the fifth day. It was old and poorly organized, filled with music and stories and images from Earth and the human colonies. She spent hours exploring it, her dark eyes wide with wonder. "Your people make so much," she said to one evening. "So many songs, so many tales. We had these things once before they came. Now we have only memories." Did not know what to say. He had never thought about art as something that could be taken away. He had grown up surrounded by human culture, drowning in it, taking it for granted. The idea of losing it all was beyond his imagination. He sat with and watched an old film from Earth, something simple about love and loss and the passage of time. Cried at the ending, tears rolling down her blue-gray cheeks. Pretended not to notice, giving her the dignity of her emotion. Joined them for the next film. She did not cry, but saw her hands clench during the difficult parts. She was feeling things she had taught herself not to feel, opening doors she had closed long ago. On the seventh day, told them about Earth. He told them about the wars that had nearly destroyed humanity, about the plagues that had killed billions, about the environmental collapse that had forced their species to the edge of extinction. He told them about the long climb back, the slow rebuilding, the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. "We almost ended ourselves a dozen times," said. "Every generation thought they would be the last, but we kept going. We kept trying. We reached the stars not because we were smart or strong, but because we were too stubborn to die." Listened with an expression could not read. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "They conquered us because we were weak," she finally said. "We thought that if we did not fight, they would treat us kindly. We were wrong. They took everything anyway." Shook his head. "You were not weak. You were peaceful. There is a difference. They took advantage of that, but it does not make you less than them. It makes them worse." Looked at him with something new in her eyes. Not trust, not yet, but understanding. Recognition of a shared experience across the vast gulf between their species. Spoke up. "Humans are strange. You destroy yourselves, then save yourselves. You fight everyone, even each other. But when you see someone in trouble, you help them, even when it costs you everything." Thought about that. It was true in a way. Humans were contradictory creatures, capable of great cruelty and great kindness in equal measure. The same species that had invented war had also invented mercy. The same hearts that harbored hatred also harbored love. "We are complicated," admitted. "We do not always do the right thing, but we try, some of us anyway." On the eighth day, they reached Harmon Station. It was a relief to see the familiar shape of a human settlement against the stars. Had been to Harmon many times, knew its streets and merchants and repair shops. Here, at least, they would be among friends. But repairs would be expensive. Checked his accounts and felt his heart sink. The chase through the asteroid field had cost him more than he realized. The cargo run he had planned was now impossible. He would be lucky to afford the basic repairs needed to keep the Quiet Dawn flying. He did not tell the sisters immediately. He did not want them to feel like burdens, but noticed his expression, noticed the way he stared at his financial records with growing despair. "How bad?" she asked. Told her the truth. He had nothing left to offer them. He could barely keep himself and his ship alive. The promise he had made to find them a proper place, to help them start a new life, seemed impossible now. Was quiet for a moment, then she spoke. "We will work, and we will pay our own way." Shook his head. "You do not owe me anything. I bought you by accident. You are not my responsibility." "That is exactly why we owe you everything." His voice was firm. "You did not have to help us. You did not have to run. You chose to do these things, and now you are suffering for it. We will not let you suffer alone." Nodded in agreement. We are not helpless, we have skills, we can contribute. Looked at them, these two aliens he had known for barely a week. They were offering him something he had not expected: partnership, mutual support, the beginnings of something that might one day be called family. He wanted to refuse. He wanted to tell them to find their own path, to build their own lives, to forget about the foolish human who had stumbled into their story. But he saw the determination in their eyes, the need to repay what they saw as a debt, and he understood that refusing would hurt them more than accepting. "All right," he said. "We work together, we survive together, we figure out the rest as we go." Smiled. It was the first time had seen her smile, and it transformed her face from something guarded and wary into something beautiful. "Together," she agreed. They docked at Harmon Station, began arranging repairs. The sisters began looking for work. For a few hours, everything seemed possible. Then received a message from the station administrator. A diplomatic vessel had arrived. They were demanding the extradition of stolen property. Had 12 hours to surrender the sisters or face arrest. The peace had been an illusion. The fight was just beginning. Stared at the message for a long time. 12 hours. That was all the time he had to decide the fate of two people who had come to trust him. He could run again. The quiet dawn was not fully repaired, but it could fly. They could disappear into the vastness of space, find some forgotten corner of the galaxy where they could not reach them, but knew how that story ended. Running meant running forever. Running meant looking over their shoulders for the rest of their lives. Running meant giving up any hope of a normal existence. Did not want to run, he wanted to fight. He found, and in their small cabin, already packing what little they had seen the message. They were preparing to flee. "Stop," said, "we are not leaving." Looked at him like he had lost his mind. "They will arrest you, they will take us. What choice do we have?" Sat down across from them. "There is another way. Human law allows for legal challenges in cases like this. I can demand a hearing. I can make them prove their claim in front of witnesses." Frowned. "Will that work?" Was honest. "I do not know, but I know that running guarantees we lose. Fighting at least gives us a chance." Was quiet. She had spent her life being told what to do, being moved from place to place, being treated as property without rights or voice. The idea of standing up and demanding to be heard was foreign to her. It was also terrifying and exciting. "What would we have to do?" she asked. Explained his plan. He would challenge the claim under galactic trade law. He had bought the sisters in a legal transaction at a station that permitted such sales. They could not simply take them back without acknowledging that the original sale was legitimate, which meant acknowledging that they were selling their own subjects as property. It was a complicated argument, full of legal contradictions and logical traps. Was not a lawyer. He had no formal training in interstellar law, but he had spent 12 years navigating the complicated rules of trade and commerce, learning which arguments worked and which did not. He knew how to find weaknesses in a contract. He knew how to make powerful people uncomfortable. The hearing took place in the station's central chamber, a large room filled with representatives from a dozen different species. The delegation was impressive. 3 officials in formal robes with cold eyes and colder voices. They spoke of property rights and sovereign claims and the sacred nature of combine law. Spoke of something else entirely. He asked a simple question. Were the sisters citizens of the combine, or were they property? They hesitated. It was a trap, and they knew it. If they said the sisters were citizens, then they had rights, and the enslavement was illegal. If they said the sisters were property, then the sale was valid and was the legal owner. They chose a middle path. They claimed the sisters were subjects, a category that existed somewhere between person and object. Pressed harder. What rights did subjects have? Could they be bought and sold? Could they speak in their own defense? The hearing stretched on for hours. Was not eloquent. He stumbled over words. He lost track of his arguments. He made mistakes that a real lawyer would never make, but he was persistent. He refused to give up. He asked the same questions in different ways until the contradictions in the position became impossible to ignore. Then asked to speak. The room fell silent. No one had expected this. The officials looked uncomfortable. The station administrator seemed unsure whether to allow it, nodded his encouragement. Walked to the center of the room. She was small compared to most of the beings present, her thin frame and pale skin making her look fragile, but her voice was strong. She told her story. She told them about being born into servitude, about never knowing freedom, about watching her parents die in labor camps. She told them about being sold the first time, then the second time, then the third. She told them about the things that had been done to her, the indignities she had suffered, the hope that had slowly died inside her. She told them about the human who had bought her by accident and chosen to treat her as a person instead of property, about the chase through the asteroids, the damaged ship, the journey to this station, about the first time in her life she had been asked what she wanted instead of told what to do. Her voice broke only once when she spoke about her sister, about who had never known anything but chains, who still flinched when people raised their voices, who was just beginning to understand that she might have a future worth living. The room was silent when she finished. Even the officials had no immediate response. Spoke next. Her words were simpler, her message clearer. "I was born a thing," she said. "I was raised a thing. I was sold as a thing. Then a human made a mistake and suddenly I was a person. Is that not strange? One mistake and everything changed. I do not know what will happen to us, but I know that I do not want to be a thing again. I want to be just, is that too much to ask?" The station administrator called for a recess. When the hearing resumed, his decision was brief. The claim was on technical grounds. The transaction at station was legitimate under local law, was the legal owner of any property purchased there, and if he chose to release that property, that was his right. Released them immediately. The documentation was filed, and became legally and officially free beings. Their delegation without another word. They could have escalated, they could have threatened, but the hearing had been broadcast across the station's network. Other species were watching, other were watching. The story was already spreading. In the days that followed, messages began to arrive. Scattered across the galaxy, hearing about what had happened, asking questions about asylum procedures and human territories, and the strange cargo hauler who had fought an empire with nothing but words. His business was ruined. His cargo run was long past due. His accounts were empty. He had nothing left except a damaged ship and 2 alien sisters who refused to leave his side. It was enough. Months later, the Quiet Dawn still flew, but it no longer carried meat or machine parts or any of the ordinary cargo had once transported. It carried refugees, displaced peoples, beings who had nowhere else to go and no one else to help them. Handled the technical work, keeping the ship running with skills that improved every day. Handled communications, her natural gift for language expanding to include a dozen new tongues. Handled everything else, from navigation to negotiation to the endless paperwork that came with helping people escape from impossible situations. They were not getting rich. They were barely getting by. But they were doing something that mattered, something that made the galaxy a little bit better, one person at a time. One evening, as the ship traveled between stars, asked why humans were the way they were, why they refused to accept things as they were, why they always had to push and fight and struggle against the order of the universe. Thought about the question for a long time. "I think it is because we are young," he finally said. "The other species have been around for thousands of years. They have learned to accept what cannot be changed. But humans are still new. We have not learned to give up yet. We look at broken systems and we ask why. We look at suffering and we ask what can be done. We do not know any better." Laughed from her seat at the controls. You say that like it is a weakness, but I think it is your greatest strength. Smiled, maybe. Or maybe we are just too stubborn to know when we have lost. Shook her head. No, it is more than that. You see possibilities where others see walls. You see hope where others see despair. It is a gift, a strange, wonderful human gift. Looked at his unlikely family, the two sisters who had entered his life through accident and stayed by choice. He looked at the stars ahead, full of darkness and light in equal measure. He looked at the future they were building together, one small act of kindness at a time. He had started this journey alone, a cargo hauler with no ambitions beyond keeping his ship flying. He had ended it as something else entirely, a father figure, a friend, a symbol of what humans could be when they chose compassion over comfort. The galaxy was old and tired. Humanity was young and stubborn. Sometimes that combination changed everything.